Hey guys, number one Marmaduke fan here, and we're looking at Bride of the Water God number 4, because I just realized I have renewed this the maximum number of times, and it's due at the library soon. Speed review! So I reviewed Volume 3. My library didn't have Volume 2, because my experiment is I want to read every manga at my library, and if they don't have it, I'm just going to keep reading anyway and see if I can keep up with things. So I think because I missed Volume 2, I missed out on some like subplot stuff, and throughout Volume 3 I kind of basically understood the basic fairy tale plot, but I didn't get what was going on with the side gods and what their deal is. And in 4, I was kind of hoping that I'd start to like pick up on all the side characters and get to know what was going on with the subplot. I still don't know what the subplots are. Now, part of that might be I don't know anything about Korean culture. This is my introduction to a lot of these characters. It'd probably be easier if it was something like Zeus, Hercules, and Hera, where it's really easy for me to keep those mentally separate. But if it's a bunch of Korean names that I've seen for the first time, things start to run together. I also think that Mi-kyung Yun, the reason I'm giving this a qualified recommend is she's doing really impressive detail work. And I think she has a good primal understanding of fairy tale stories. And what else? Her comic art is all about like selling the romance of the idea. So she does a good job not just of drawing like detailed pictures, but of also using panels to create this sense of mystique. But I think her weakness is she's not a very clear writer or comic storyteller. So there will be like whole scenes where there are characters, and I'll think, oh, is that a flashback because there's this little character here that's drawn differently, and then you find out later, oh, that was her sister, so that wasn't a flashback. And like I said, I have no clue what's going on with the side gods. So even though part of this is kind of frustratingly confusing, my recommendation is based on things like what a great sort of cultural crash course this is in Korean culture and history, and on the kind of ornate drawing. So Eo Ga Heng, I tried to Google that, and this is apparently like the only translation of this ancient Korean poem. Chocho Gyeong-woo Sung, so she tells a bit of the story of Gyeong-woo and then relates the characters of Gyeong-woo to her characters, because it's like two lovers who can only see each other like one day a year when they cross like the river of the Milky Way galaxy. And then like a little like lyrical poem about a Korean geisha, wishing that she could have died with her lover. It's just really interesting. It's interesting to get to be exposed to these aspects of Korean culture, and they're kind of related to the romance of this manga. So that aspect of it is worthwhile. There are also some aspects of the plot that I think are quite strong. They just get buried in some of the other problems. So when last we left Soa and Habaek, who at nighttime grows from a little boy into a big, handsome, dreamy man and goes by the nickname Mui. Mui made like a wager or a deal with his mother, who's like the goddess of torture, that if they send Soa back and take her memories away from him, if she truly loves him, she will remember his name. And so he kind of takes that wager, and it seems to be clear. He says that he's not in love with Soa, but it seems like he actually is genuinely in love with her. So is she going to remember Habaek the water god and be with him, or is she going to forget all about that experience? Now, when she's back on Earth, this cool guy she's known since she was a kid, I think his name is Dong Young. Dong Young has always been like a good friend to her. He's sort of a stable, like mature guy. He wants to marry her and kind of get her out of her, father's abusive household. And she likes him, but it's clear that she doesn't love him. So Mui shows up, and they argue about who loves Soa. And then Soa does this kind of cool thing where I'm neither a thing or someone's possession. I don't like either of you. Why do you assume everything will go your way and never ask me what I think? I can't stand this. You know what? I'm not marrying anyone. Leave me alone. So I like that Soa gets to demonstrate some agency. She's a character who is kind of like one of these, beautiful girl has to be sacrificed to the gods to stop the famine or stop the drought. And then she returns from that. She returns from the halls of the water god, not remembering anything. So this theme of she's being denied agency by her father, by the culture she lives in, by the cruelty of fate, is balanced by her demonstrating agency in scenes like this. Now, I kept thinking, well, the way they've got to fix this is she's going to remember who Mui is, right? And that she actually loves Mui, because she sure seems to love Mui. And then they kind of Mi-kyung kind of solves the problem in a different way than I was expecting, and it was kind of fun because it balanced her having agency with this being a fairy tale. So the problem is she's forgotten all of her memories of the water god's kingdom, right? So what does Mui do? Well, he just kidnaps her and takes her back to the water god's kingdom so she can get her memories back, right? Why should I ask you to make a decision based on you not having the memories that you're supposed to have of me? If I take you back and you get your memories back, then you can make an informed decision. So it's a toxically masculine kind of romantic idea, but it's not actually toxic because what he's trying to do is he's trying to restore to her memory so she can make an informed decision. I thought that was just kind of like, it was cheesecakey. It was like a romantic kidnapping, but it actually kind of made sense in context. Now here's another example of like, oh, it's so romantic, but I don't know what's going on. Like, they show up and the other gods are wandering around. He like hides her, and she's clearly flustered because he's holding her tight. I don't understand, like, why is he hiding her from this god? What's going on? Why are they all trolling Habayek? Is his first wife dead or not? First they say she's dead, and then she seems to show up, and they say she's alive, but then that wasn't her, and maybe in a flashback it looks like the wife was trying to betray him the whole time, or was that another god disguising himself as the old wife? I don't know. That's the point. I have no clue what's going on with that. This was another thing where the basic character arc for Soa is she's trapped in these difficult circumstances. She's confused by her feelings, and she wants to have some agency over her life. So she kind of asks this legitimate question, why do you keep yanking me around? And then it turns out that she actually wasn't brave enough to say that, and she's having a hard time forming the sentence. And so then she says, I won't be a cheap replacement for Nakbin, the first wife. Okay, so she kind of got to say part of what she was thinking about, even though she didn't actually say what she was originally thinking about. That was kind of like a cute gag because it's her thinking about wanting to be standing up for herself better and then finding out it's actually kind of harder to get her to say that. This is sort of voicing my concern. So the fairy tale aspect of this is that she is forced to be married to Habayak, who is a little kid during the daytime. At nighttime, Habayak transforms into this big, tall dreamboat, and he's introduced himself as Mui, and she suspected that Mui and Habayak were the same, but when she noticed that they didn't have the same tattoo, she concluded, well, they must be two different people then. So she still hasn't figured it out. Now, at first, it was kind of fun that, Mui was playing this game with her. Like, she doesn't know who I really am. So I'm kind of by accident, he just sort of stuck with that just to see how long he could go without her finding out. At this point, it doesn't make any sense for him not to tell her the truth. And at that point, it then becomes hard to respect him, or it's hard to like a character who's being deceptive. I don't like, almost nobody likes the liar revealed cliche Hollywood plot. So in a fairy tale, you can get away with stuff like this because it's short. Like if you have a short little 30-minute fairy tale, yeah, you have the guy transforming into a mysterious man at night. That makes sense. But when you start getting into longer format novels, you start to want to have reasons for these plot contrivances. Like he can't tell her who he really is, or she will die, or something dramatic like that, so that I'm invested in knowing, okay, he isn't telling her who he is, but he has a good reason. At this point, you don't have any good reason not to tell her that you're actually her husband Habayek at this point. Lots of beautiful illustrations, lots of him being aggressive. I've always liked the epilogues because it's a lot of Kyun getting to talk about her process, and then actually one of her fans kind of roasted her. Dear author, hello, your epilogue is more interesting than the actual story. And she's sitting in the corner with a bunch of drinks. So I think that this whole story would have been helped by an editor who would tighten up the plot, or maybe like kind of force her to, I don't know, give some good reasons to the character's behavior beyond just like the romantic back and forth, nobody knows what anybody's about kind of stuff. She talks about her assistant process of like having her assistant draw a flower. How should I go about drawing this part? Draw it perfectly. I'm really interested by this whole like relationship of the main artist working with a kind of like assistant artist to make the project. And like she draws it, but then she only drew one flower, and of course her style is all about like ornation and tons of flowers and tons of architecture. She draws herself sometimes as a cartoony panda and sometimes as a realistic panda for effect. This was a great gag because her friends are getting married and she says, oh, well, I like drawing better. And then she draws like all of these romantic, sexy scenes. I can't keep this up. She draws romance, but she really wants romance, even though she can't balance the work life of a mangaka with wanting a cool guy. Someone asked her why she has a panda, and she has all this talk about pandas, and her sister says the answer is because she's lazy like a panda, and she gets upset again. I don't know. I like seeing artists roast themselves and make fun of their process. Like, my deadline's coming up. I'll draw the panda in super detail and not worry about the deadline. Oh, and then she talks about cultural notes, like the actual story of Gyeonwoo and Jinkyo that she alludes to in the story. What she talk about here, she talks about things like, how Mui ends up in like almost nothing, and Habayek, when he's in his little boy form, then he's in like really formal clothing. What's the deal with that? She mixes up, this was interesting, Jinkyo returned to heaven with her 3 kids and left Gyeonwoo behind. That's the fairy and the woodcutter. Well, the fairy and the woodcutter is also derived from the story of Gyeonwoo and Jinkyo. So that's the thing that interests me. I'm really interested in finding out all of these kind of obscure, myth and fairy tale sources that she's drawing from. What is this? The goddess Mura has eyes that are 2 different colors. Sometimes when I'm hurrying to meet a deadline, I forget Mura's facial design, and my editor has to draw corrections onto the film. Therefore, I find it very bothersome to draw Mura, but I'll tell you about that story later, since I'm too busy now. And what am I talking about? Sorry, not now, Mura. Okay. She talks about like her little side characters who are supposed to grow up rapidly, and she'll talk about like other weird manga where people will say, hey, your character Habayek looks a little like this character from some train conductor manga. Oh, well, I'll draw them together. Hamin from what? Hamin from Railroad. Okay, I wonder if she made that one too, or if it's an entirely different manga. I'll go poking around for Railroad. So my qualified recommendation is some frustrating stuff, some confusing stuff. The recommendation is based on Mi-kyung having this very ornate, detailed style that's fascinating, and based on getting to get some like interesting, cultural reference points for Korean culture. It needs to be tightened up plot wise. Apart from that, I enjoy myself. I'm confused and thoroughly enjoying myself the entire time I'm reading something. As long as I am enjoying myself, I will struggle through the confusion and keep reading. With that, I'm #1 Marmaduke fan. Like, comment, subscribe. I love you guys, and I'll catch you later.